It's the enrollment trap, but we're fighting back. The enrollment trap.
All right, thank you for joining us on Enrollment Trap Voices. Today we're talking with Missyinda Baru, who's generously agreed to share their experience. Welcome.
Thank you. We always start by reminding listeners you're not alone and you're not imagining what happened to you. These stories matter. Before we get into your borrower journey, can you tell us a little about who you are outside of the student loan world? I am working as a property manager in Chicago and, just trying to get through my late 40s into my early 50s in one piece.
What were you hoping for when you first started thinking about school or career training?
My journey with education was kind of a long roundabout thing. When I was in my late teens, early 20s, I wanted to go to art school, and I ended up actually going to a community school. I went to Kennesaw State University before it was a university. I got all of my, basic core classes out of the way, but I had originally wanted to go to like Savannah College of Art and Design, and I got accepted at those larger schools, but they're expensive. I went to a community school, paid for it by working, and then the dot-com bubble burst. The economy kind of crashed, and my original path through school was doing computer art. And so I decided to kind of, take a step back and figure out what I wanted to do. I just started working. Then suddenly I'm pushing 28 and I'm working retail and I'm working at a bar and I'm sewing for a living, and I'm working really, really hard, and I'm not really getting any place. So I decided that, I needed to go back to school to get a piece of paper to say I could do the things that I could do so that I could get paid better.
I mean, that's kind of what a lot of people go through, right? Struggles, and they think school is the answer. Can you walk us through how you first connected with the school, what you were told, promised, or led to believe?
Originally, I was looking to get a degree in fashion design because I wanted to start a plus size fashion line. So I was looking at schools that were either in New York or California or possibly Chicago because I have family that lives in Chicago. I was looking at the International Academy of Design and Technology. I spoke with some recruiters because I saw one of those commercials on TV saying, hey, come join our family, go to school with us. I sent an email, just looking for some information. I sent that email to, other reputable schools and got back pamphlets and that kind of thing. And IADT, a recruiter actually called me and emailed me and made me feel they were my friend. And, I had lots of questions and they had lots of really good answers. When I asked, okay, well, I want to, since I was planning on moving, it would make more sense to move to a place that, had a good number of jobs in the industry, right? That makes more sense than going to school one place and then moving another place. And I was told that Chicago, absolutely had lots of jobs in the fashion industry, lots of opening entry-level positions, and told that the basic pay was, $50,000 a year, and that, student loans wouldn't be a problem because you would get a job that could pay those student loans without a problem, and told that they had really great job placement, like 95% job placement, and that they helped with interviewing skills and helped with portfolios, and they had ongoing education. So since there were multiple branches of the school, even if you ended up in another city, there was always a school where you could go back back and take more classes. And all of that drew me in because I got accepted to the institute. I got accepted to other schools that were reputable. They were more expensive and they didn't have the added, hey, we've got this kind of placement. We've got this kind of after you graduate assistance to get you into jobs. And so that just looked like a better choice.
So when you look back now, what stands out as the moment things just really didn't look right, didn't feel right? Even if you didn't have the words for it at the time, what was that moment for you that, hey, something's wrong?
I think that in the back of your head, you often have these voices telling you, hey, this is kind of odd, but you're so focused on trying to do something that you ignore those little voices because you're like, oh, you gaslight yourself, right? And so when I was in my design classes, there would be other students who they weren't producing things that I would say would get a passing grade, and yet these people were still in these classes and progressing. And I was like, okay, that's a little weird, because like if you're not gaining the tools that you need in the classes that you're taking, then passing those classes doesn't make sense because you can't take that into a workplace, right? You have to be able to produce something. But, I just kind of brushed it off because I don't know what their grades are and I don't know what other classes they're taking. So, maybe it's all fine. And then getting into my last quarter of school, we were supposed to have like these big industry events where we were meeting with companies and meeting with other people who are in the industry, networking events and this kind of thing. And those things never materialized, right? We had this for 3 years of school. We were told, we would have this big event and we had to produce our portfolio and, all of these things. And there would be a really big event where we would meet lots of people who could help us get a job. And there was an event, but it was like, I would put it on the same level as when you have a science fair, when you're in school. It just wasn't really a thing. But then I graduated. All of the help that was supposed to be there after graduation with job placement and a whole department of the school who was supposed to help with job placement, that wasn't really a thing. It was a cork board with retail positions on it and one person who would point you to the cork board. And then the additional education portion of it wasn't really there either. Unfortunately for me, my real realization didn't come until I'd already put most of my time into getting through school.
I have to chuckle because that is it's validating to hear someone else go through nearly the same experience I did with a
Yeah.
art and design school.
I was sitting
So,
here listening to her tell her story, and I'm going, "This is Michelle's story." I mean,
mhm,
the exact same things that Missy's bringing up are the exact same issues you had with your school was also an art school.
it was.
It's like a lot of schools do the same maneuver, but I just found it very I don't want I'm not gonna say comical, but
Right. It is
off-putting that
validating though.
yeah, that you both experienced the exact same thing from your schools.
Wow. Okay. Take a breather on that. So, Missy, what impact did the school have on your life with your financial, emotional life? What was the biggest impact that going to school had for you?
After I graduated, I was looking for a job, right? that would help me pay off these loans that I had taken out. Because when I graduated, I now had more than 50 grand in loans to pay. And I was still working the retail job that I had when I came back to Chicago. That retail job was never going to pay off those loans. Really doing my best to just apply to every job possible and really not finding much out there in the field that I had my quote unquote degree in. And going back to I believe my loans at that time were with Navient, going to the loan officers and saying, hi, I can't afford to pay what you're asking me to pay because I'm just not finding a job in my field, and them putting me into forbearance and just feeling really like I had failed, that I had made really stupid choices and that I would have been better off never going to the school because I had put in all of this work and I had gotten nothing in return. I was still in the same position that I had been, except I wasn't. Now I was carrying a mountain of debt on my back with the future ahead of me looking like I would be working retail until I dropped dead because I would never be able to retire and I would never be able to pay off this debt. And the debt was just kept growing.
We've all been there. We watch as the interest accrues and it just becomes overwhelming. And you feel like you're never going to get out of it. Now talking about the harm that's a result of enrolling in this school, many borrowers describe a moment when the reality hit them. Did you have a moment like that where you were just like, you realized you went from blaming yourself to realizing that it was the school and it wasn't you? Did you have a moment like that?
I came to a realization that that was a thing when the school shut down, when the school changed names from IADT to Sanford Brown, and then it closed down. And I realized that all of the things that they told me, it wasn't just the things they had told me. These were things that they had told other people, and that they didn't just sucker me. They suckered a lot of. And so at that point, I started doing searches. And I also realized that they had lost accreditation while I was in school there. And I had gone to school there because they told me that they had been accredited. It was one of the things I had asked them. And within several semesters of me going there, they had lost accreditation and they hadn't told anybody. And realizing that made me realize that the entire thing was not built to give people the tools to build better futures. The whole thing was just to put money in somebody's pocket.
You've gone through school, you've had your experience, you're burdened with this debt. Let's talk about the borrower defense journey. How did you first learn about borrower defense or the sweet settlement? And which did you learn of first? Did you learn about the sweet settlement, which led you to discover borrower defense? Or did you find out about borrower defense and you happened to file between the post-class deadlines to become part of sweet?
So when I had started Googling to see, about if there were possibly any class actions against my school, one of the search things that came up was borrower's defense, but it was buried. And I was just like, okay, that's a thing. So let's go look at that. And I went to the website to fill it out, but the forms themselves were overwhelming and I didn't feel like I had the right kind of evidence. I kind of pushed it to the side and said, okay, well, I will look for more evidence and maybe I can find more things about my school. Then Betsy DeVos ended up as the education secretary and all of that was going on. And I was like, oh, well, there's no point in doing this now because she's doing all sorts of shady things. And then I couldn't let it go, so I kept doing searches. And that's when I saw the suite case. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, these people are doing a thing. So I went to submit the borrower's defense because I was like, there have to be other people out there that are also going through this. And if they've got this case, then maybe this will work for me as well. And so I tried filling out the forms, and they kept failing, and it kept crashing, and it kept deleting me. And then finally I was able to submit my borrower's defense on, I think it was July 5th, 2022. So I'm a postie, and it is just like the borrower's defense applications were built to make you afraid of them, so you would give up. And the sweet class action gave me the courage to just try again.
I know it was recommended by those in the suite group. Did you ever try to reach out to PPSL to get moved into the tech exception?
I didn't, because by time I found the suite community, like Reddit and everything else, it was kind of after all of that. And then somebody had recommended when I actually found you guys to try. But since it's so late and everything else is kind of happening, I was just like, that I don't want to call more attention to myself.
That's understandable. So, what was the hardest part of the whole entire process for you? Was it the filling out the forms? Was it waiting, the uncertainty? Was it just trying to figure everything out? What was the hardest part for you?
One of the most frustrating parts of the borrower's defense was trying to fill out these forms and bringing whatever evidence you have and going through filling out those forms, and then having things crash on you. And then once you've filled everything out, you're just sitting, waiting, and not getting really any kind of feedback.
Feedback from FSA, from PPSL, from the community?
From FSA.
Mm-hmm.
Even with Sweet, right? Like, we were all waiting for some sort of a deadline to pass so that we could find out what's going to happen with all this debt, right? We go to FSA, we go to the Department of Education saying, hi, I took this loan with this understanding, and now I'm asking for relief because you're supposed to be the department that prevents schools from doing shady things. And when you don't, then you're supposed to be there for the people that you gave the loans to. There has to be some sort of a recourse for people to not be stuck with a lemon. We have lemon laws for cars. So filling out those forms with the expectation that somebody whose job it is to look at those forms is going to look at those forms, and not in 10 years, not in 20 years. Look at those forms in a timely fashion so that, okay, even if the decision goes against me, there's a decision.
It really says a lot about FSA and the Federal Student Aid and the whole entire Department of Education on the utter failure of it. There's so many people that are in this position that it really plays with your mind, and it's so stressful. And it's not just a few of us. There's 500,000, and that's just the ones that applied.
Right.
There's probably others, another 500,000 to 1 million who don't even know about borrower defense or any type of recourse if their school has lied to them. It speaks to the failure of that whole entire system. We were talking about the after graduation event where you showed your portfolio, and the schools claimed to have top agencies to come and interview you, possibly hire you on the spot. That's what they told me. But I had a different experience where I went unprepared because nobody told me that it was for the on-campus students that got more training for that event. I was an online student and wasn't even supposed to be there. So I felt very unprepared. You had a different experience because you had some experience and knowledge in the industry itself, and you didn't feel how I did with being unprepared. You felt misled and disappointed that the industry people weren't attending, correct? Do you
Correct.
want to pick
So
back up on that?
yeah. So before I went back to school, I had been doing like manufacturing out of my house. So I was sewing for a living. I was also doing costuming for theaters and doing conventions. And so my technical skills were strong, even though they were self-taught. So I had solid talent. And my original career path was going through computer graphics. And so my portfolio itself was also well put together because I already had a lot of just raw material going into the school. And the portfolios that I saw with the students that were also attending this event, they were also very strong. These people put a lot of work, a lot of effort, and they had created amazing portfolios. And if the school had actually come through on its promise of having actual industry people attend, actually relevant job, having people in those industries at the event, then people would have gotten hired off of that work because there was absolutely talent that was wasted because the school didn't uphold their end of the deal, right? We went to the school for training, but we also went to the school for exposure. We were told that our instructors were people who actually worked in those industries, that they would help us get jobs after. We attended this job event with these portfolios that we spent a lot of time and money on, with the expectation that real companies were going to be there to see this work. And
That was the big lie.
yeah,
What they told me specifically was Disney and MTV, and there was this new company called Pixar, and all the top ad agencies, all the magazines were going to be at this event, and they really promoted that. But that was the big lie.
right.
Because for me, there was all in Pittsburgh, there were nothing but little print shops, mostly print shops that just needed someone to come in and clean up a logo or lay out a business card.
Right. My school was in Chicago. So when I was looking at different schools, IADT, I specifically said, is the fashion industry really going anywhere in Chicago? Like, I know if I move to New York, if I move to California, I know that those are places where the industry is strong, it's growing, and that, I can get a job as a seamstress anywhere. But can I get a fashion industry job in Chicago? And the recruiters were like, oh yeah, absolutely. Chicago is the next New York. I absolutely believed the things that they told me. I absolutely believed the things that they sent over to me, saying that yes, they can help me get into a position, even if it was entry level, by going to their school, and it would be less expensive, but that they were still accredited. And so then this industry event that should have been a stepping stone was just us playing in a pond and getting nothing out of it.
Did you have anybody else that you at the event that you were talking to that you were kind of like, hey, what's going on? Where's everybody? Where's these top dogs at? Or did you speak with anyone to
So I went to a lot of the other tables just to kind of see what everybody else was doing. And we all kind of had that feeling of, wow, this whole thing and all this time and all this money and all we're really seeing is each other. And
Yes.
it really was more like a high school science fair in
Mm-hmm.
the middle of nowhere where you don't even have judges coming around, as opposed
Yeah.
to some well thought out, well put together job placement event. Most of the people that were there were other students or the family of the students.
Same for me. Yep.
The heartbreaking thing is how much talent, how much effort is wasted by for-profit schools. Like, people who go to for-profit schools, they absolutely want to make their life better. And they're willing to put in the time and the work and the effort. That all gets stolen by a company that pretends to be educators.
Right. Especially fall victim in the arts industry, because we all know like art is subjective in general, especially like graphic arts, digital arts. But when you see something in a school that is, let's say, veterinarian, it's a science and there's not a lot of room for interpretation, like
Right.
a blood type is a blood type, a disease is a disease. This is how you treat the disease. And I often wonder how that compares, because I know a big part of bar defense are from the arts industry.
Right. But there's a
A whole
lot of colleges, universities, for-profit organizations that are targeting people who want to go into like nursing and the more technical skills, that they also, like, if somebody doesn't necessarily know how to get into the programs they want to get into, they choose these for-profit programs and they don't get what they need to get the jobs on the other side.
That's so
And
true.
it's stealing from us, the students, because that's time you don't get back. And that's putting you in debt. And so you can't follow another path, right? Like, once you figure out, oh, this school was a scam,
It's too late.
it's too late. You don't have that time, and you also don't have that money to go back
Mhm.
to a legitimate course. And so that's stealing from you as the student, but it's also stealing from the general community, because
Mhm.
now that person who could have been contributing more to society can't.
Right.
And so you
Because
can't
they're
pay back.
working themselves to death to try and pay on this student loan.
Right. And so that
Mhm.
student loan can't get paid off because you don't make enough money to pay it off.
Mm.
So that is a debt that the government is just sitting on, that was paid to the school. The school made that money, right?
Mhm. And they're
So
not
the government,
responsible.
right,
They
they're
just
never
get to
held
walk away.
responsible. But the taxpayers, they loaned that money to the Department of Education. The Department of Education said, yes, we're going to insure this loan, and gave you the money to that school. But you end up with a piece of paper that isn't worth the paper it's written on, and you don't end up with a job, and the general greater society doesn't end up with somebody who can do a needed position. When you get a better job, you get paid more, you pay more in taxes.
Mhm.
And so the whole thing, everybody gets screwed except for the for-profit colleges and
Right.
programs.
And then you have society out there that are complaining, well, there's people that went out there and paid off their or are still paying on their student loans. And they're like, well, why should you get a discharge? Why should you get your money back? As a taxpayer, I don't want to have to pay for you to get a free ride. And what that tells me is they're victim shaming, because
Right.
they're not seeing that we were victims of a civil crime.
Right.
We were victims of a crime. And by you not supporting and saying your loans are going to get forgiven, that's a big thing in this world, you're getting a free ride. And it's not it at all. People are understanding that we are also taxpayers. And it's not so much that you're complaining if you have to pay money to the government. You should be blaming the government,
Right. Well,
like not the victims.
to start with, the schools themselves, education should never be for profit, because this is what happens. When education is for profit, then you need oversight to make sure that the product that those for profit schools are making, right, providing, is legitimate for what you're paying. But often it isn't, because the oversight isn't there. And so you have have people paying money for education that will never lead to jobs because they're not made to uphold their end of the deal. And so the government oversight needs to be there, but ultimately schools shouldn't be for profit, because if the schools weren't for profit, then you have less bad actors involved in the whole thing.
Yes, exactly. I think it makes me wonder, there was a huge time period from the early 2000s still to today. A lot of these for-profit schools that are on the Exhibit C list are still open.
Oh yeah.
The one I can think of off top of my head is University of Phoenix. I was scrolling on Facebook and I saw a video of theirs, a post of them congratulating their 2025 graduating class and how to put their tassels on their gown and everything. And I thought, how are you still doing this?
I still see commercials for them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that my school got shut down and that they are not suckering other people. So my first time through school, I went to Kennesaw State, and so I had core classes, but like that was that was the, late 90s, before 2000. Like those credits aren't really good for much,
Yeah,
4
anyway, yeah.
decades later, you know.
Yeah. Well,
If
just
I
advancement in technology.
Yeah, absolutely. And so like if I wanted to go back to school, I would have to redo everything. And
Mm.
I'm staring down 50.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have the same kind of energy.
Yeah, I'm about to be 52 and I'm looking forward to my retirement more than trying to go back to school. Especially in today's administration and society, I don't think I'll ever be able to retire. I will work till I die. And that was ingrained in me because I had all this debt hanging over me.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I currently, my loans are sitting at $67,000. And that isn't nearly as high as so many other people, but that's a big lodestone around my neck. Until that is zeroed out, that will absolutely hold me back from being able to buy a house. I haven't had a car since 2011 because I wouldn't be able to pay a car loan. Thankfully, I live in Chicago, so I've got public transportation. That's one of those, like, that kind of debt, while not as impossible as other people's, it's still more than I can pay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thankful that in 2019, I got a job in property management so that I was no longer working retail. But in 2019, I graduated in 2011. That was 8 years later, and I was still working the job that I had when I moved back to Chicago. Like the retail job I was working in Atlanta, I transferred
Mm-hmm.
with that company, and I was working in management with that company on a store level. And I had not progressed further than that since the point that I graduated. In 2019, I decided to get a different job, but that job that I got because I was in management in retail and had absolutely nothing to do with my degree. And so going to school never got me anywhere except for in debt.
Mm-hmm. Eventually, I landed this job where I'm at now in 2010. And so we're coming up on 16 years in my industry, and it was total on the job training. I didn't know nothing, and I'm still here, but I'm still here at the same level. I've never had a promotion until this year when they decided to do it's where they basically give everyone a raise because of the economy. It's not
Right.
a cost of
Cost
living,
of
but it's
living.
like this was like a modification of your title
Gotcha.
because we all came in about the same time, and so we all got senior in front of our name.
Right. But,
You know.
and that's the thing though, like you're self-taught. You went to a school, but ultimately you're self-taught.
Hmm.
And
And
so,
you were too. You said
yeah,
you were taught in fashion.
I started sewing when I was in 8th grade. Originally, when I went to school, I was going for computer graphics because I was told that computers, there would be a job. And then the dot-com bubble burst. And then I was like, okay, well, maybe maybe that's not the idea, but I was still sewing. And then when I went back to school, I was like, my passion, the thing that has been with me the entire time, has been making clothes. I want to make clothes for people so that they feel better about themselves, because
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong with your body just because your body doesn't look like everybody else. So I was self-taught, and I really was just like, I just need a piece of paper so that I can go to somebody with money and say, pay me to do what I'm already doing.
You could not even get a glance until you had a piece of paper.
Right.
And it went from you needed any degree to now you need a bachelor's degree. And I think now it's like corporations, for the positions that you would be able to pay on your student loans and eventually pay them off, you need a master's degree in
Right.
for that level of salary.
And the degree that I had, I mean, I could get a job as a seamstress, but I could get a job as a seamstress before I got the degree. I had been doing seamstress work. I had been doing manufacture work, but I didn't want to sew for the rest of my life. I never needed a degree to tell me that I could sew, you know? I wanted to design the clothes so that people could buy them. There is no way that one person can sew all of the clothes. That's not what I
Mhm.
wanted to do. And I really thought that like having a degree would get me that foot in the door. And if I had a degree from a respectable school, then having a degree would have gotten me a foot in the door. At least they would have looked at my portfolio. But if your application, your resume, your portfolio has a school that no longer even exists, nobody's going to look at it. Nobody's going to
Right.
bother.
Me being in my industry for 16 years now, if something were to happen, I lose my job, they got rid of my position, the company closes down, whatever the case, I am no longer employed. I have nothing. I have no degree to go and try and find another job in this field. I would probably have to start all over again. And I'm
Right.
not in a position to do that right now, physically, mentally, and financially, because with borrower defense, I still have 72,000 and growing every month sitting. My grant amount has been, I think it's like over 80% from, you're allotted so much in your lifetime.
Right.
Like I couldn't even try to go to another school without paying cash for it. And I
Right.
don't have that. All of this is what we call the enrollment trap, because it's a system built from the government to have corporations make money and get indebted to these citizens and be trapped the rest
Right.
of their life. The first time I talked about my story was to Teresa and Moki and the people that were in San Francisco. That was the very first time I talked about my experience to anyone fully, because I felt safe. I felt like I was amongst people that understood, that were in the same situation. And I felt like I could finally just get everything out. They all sat there and they all listened. And because of that experience, I want to bring that to this, what we're doing, the voices part of Enrollment Trap, because it was so healing for me just to be
Absolutely.
heard by people that get it. It was just so healing. So like we're new at podcasting.
Oh yeah, I really appreciate you and Frank asking me to come on and everything, cuz this is really the first time that I'm talking it all through. I found sweet before I was successful at putting in my application.
Mhm.
But like I didn't find the sweet community until I was looking for updates on the whole thing like in 2025 towards the end, because I knew that the date was coming up,
Mhm.
the January date was coming up, and so I was looking for updates, and that's when I found the Reddit for Sweet. And I did not have a Reddit account before then, and so I started a Reddit account just so that I could see the updates. And then I found the community, and then I got on Facebook, and then I got on Discord. And the community is really so helpful in having other people going through the same kind of trauma,
Yes.
interacting with other people who are stuck in that same place. And I think it's a really important thing. And that's why I'm like, if I can help, if I can do something for somebody else, I want to do that, because is, God, I wish somebody had been there for me
Mhm.
before now.
Yes, yes. The whole amount of people that are members of the class is almost 500,000 people.
Right.
So where are those other people? And what we're finding is there's someone kind of like you. You were just out doing Google searching. You stumbled on the borrower defense stuff and filled out your application, got it filled out, and then forgot about it. And yeah, they probably haven't done any more research. They're just waiting. They may have a Google alert or something, or they've signed up with PPSL and they've just based on what their newsletters say. But there is a whole community out there, and it blows my mind of all the people, 500,000 people. There's more that don't even know they are eligible for.
I mean, there's a lot of people that I went to school with who I have told to look into borrower's defense because they're in the same boat that I'm in.
Mhm. It takes individual people to
Right.
start a movement, single people to start a movement. And it starts with you talking and telling a friend.
Absolutely. And
And
I
that's
mean,
where it
I
grows.
I will say that the borrower's defense, all of the student loans and everything, that whole thing is a mess, and Congress has not helped. But in 2016, a lot of that entire election, like the conversation in 2016 was about student loan forgiveness.
Mhm.
And the choice.
Forgiveness, the big words of forgiveness. Yeah.
Right. And then the election went the way the election went, and conversation went from like students were defrauded, people are carrying all this debt. There needs to be some path towards forgiveness, towards discharge. There needs to be methods for dealing with this to, oh, well, you made your bed, now lie in it. Taxpayers shouldn't have to pay for your mistakes. And then 2021 through 2024, there was some hope. There was some progress. There was at least some sort of, okay, we're going to move forward with this, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And who we have in office, whether they're on our side or not, really, really matters,
Yes.
because the attitude changes towards whether it's, well, you screwed up, it's your fault, you made this bed, to this is a big problem, not just for me, this is a big problem for a very large portion of the country, and it's hurting everybody.
Mhm.
It's so sad that we've spent the last decade when we could have had a solution at
Mhm.
constantly pummeling everybody with these things when we could have solutions and we could be making things better for everybody.
Yes. What concerns me now is if they're dismantling the Department of Education and just basically throwing it over to the Treasury Department. Like, our money is a business.
Right. The Department of Education should be promoting the education of everybody that lives in this country, because that's how we make society better. And that's how we grow as a country. That's how science grows, how medicine grows, how we find and enrich people who want to build things. It's how society gets better. And if we don't have education that is free, that is subsidized by everybody in this country,
Mm.
if it's all for profit, then you are going to have a class divide where people with money get a good education, and where people without money don't get an education and have no opportunity. Like,
Right.
the Department of Education was created so that everybody could get an education regardless of their station in life. Lumping it
And it
into the Treasury makes it all for profit.
I think what we're going to start seeing is the collapse of higher education as a whole, because there was efforts, even in the last few years, there was like this big effort on TikTok where they call it TikTok University. And I've seen different efforts that are like the People's University or something. And we have the technology now. I mean, everything's on YouTube. If I need to know anything, even in my industry now, if I need to know anything, I really go to YouTube, and and seek out videos on how to do things. And people are getting educated through other people who are giving that away for free.
Right.
I mean, that's what we're doing at the Enrollment Trap. We're educating students and borrowers on how to do a very complex application to save their financial health.
Bacon.
Yeah. And there's always someone that's going to be out there to scam you. That's a whole nother podcast. There's always going to be somebody out there to scam you or mislead you, or we have to be mindful and we have to be careful of the paths we go in life. And that's only going to happen by talking to your friends, talking to people that have a similar interest. I don't know.
Oh,
We're
absolutely.
going down a deep path here. So if someone's listening where you were a few years ago and someone's just now listening to you, what would you want them to hear about borrower defense and the entire process?
That going to school wasn't a bad choice. It was a good choice. You wanted to make something better in your life, and that making another good choice is finding other people who are going through similar struggles, and that this community is absolutely a blessing because there are so many good people who have been there and are trying to help and are building tools that make it easier to go through this struggle. And that while the Department of Education is currently having issues, hopefully we can all make it better. And that putting in a borrower's defense application is absolutely worth it. And there are so many people here willing to help with that process.
That's what our whole community is built on, is supporting one another, understanding one another, because the people outside of this may not understand the same way we understand. Now, with that, what do you wish someone had told you earlier in your journey?
That there are other options out there, that you're not doomed to spend the rest of your life paying off a lodestone that somebody handed to you under false pretenses. I wish somebody had told me earlier to Google more and to find this community because it was there before I found it. So I hope that we get more people involved in the community so that they can bear the load together.
Well, Missy, I want to thank you for trusting you with your story today. I really think it's going to resonate with our listeners, and hopefully people who are maybe struggling with debt and haven't filed borrower defense yet will hear your story and go, you know what? That sounds like my story. Really appreciate you joining us today. You are our first, so thank you for that. We know it's difficult sharing your story, but hopefully sharing it has made you feel a little bit better about the situation.
It absolutely has. The whole reason I wanted to share my story is because I think we're all stronger together. And so hopefully it does resonate with everybody or somebody. It's helpful.
Something that a lot of us shout with our fists in the air is solidarity. And I think that rings true. Like, we have collectively gotten together to help each other out, to support each other, to uplift each other, to educate. And that's really what this grass movement is completely about, is to fight for your rights. Advocate for yourself. And like Frank said, I thank you for sharing your story. We appreciate you being here. And a lot of it resonated, like it was mimicking and mirroring what I experienced. Just validates that we're not alone. We are all in this together. So to everyone listening, your stories matter too. You're not alone and you're not imagining what happened to you. If you want to share your story, you can fill out the form on our website on the podcast page under Be Our Guest. And with that, thank you very much again, Missy. And
Thank you, Missy.
Frank?
It was great. We appreciate you being here and being
Thank
our
you.
first.
Yes.
My
thank you.
pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And everybody out there, thanks for listening. Hopefully you'll join our community if you haven't. If you went to a school that you think misled you, please, we can't emphasize this enough, fill out a borrower defense claim. It is your right.
And you can get the help from enrollmenttrap.net. And we have helpful links on our our website where you can join all these other communities on Discord, Facebook, Reddit. We have so much information. We have this AI bot that will help you through the whole process. It's all for free. Side note, never pay anyone for help.
Yes, that is a big one. The application is free. Anyone telling you they can get you approved is lying to you. Only the Department of Education can approve your application. Do not pay anyone, even if it's just $17 for a guide, because I have a step-by-step guide. We have a 116-page handbook out there about borrower defense. It's absolutely free. You just have to email us from our website to get it, because I didn't want it being stolen by these people who are charging you $17 for a step-by-step guide.
Go off, Frank. Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
It's the enrollment trap, but we're fighting back. The enrollment trap.